Friday, lawyers for the former Gauteng Health MEC Bandile Masuku filed legal papers in court to try and set aside the findings of the Special Investigating Unit. Now, Masuku was relieved of his duties following allegations of his involvement in PPE procurement irregularities, but the former MEC is saying, in terms of the law, the MEC is not directly involved in procurement matters, as it would amount to unlawful interference in operational matters. Well, joining us now to discuss this, and he joins us via Zoom from Johannesburg here, is Professor Ivor Sarakinsky. He's an associate professor at the Wits School of Governance. Prof, very good afternoon to you, and thank you very much for your time. And I think, as we've captured in that intro, the MEC, or should I say the former MEC, very clear that any involvement in operational matters on his side would have amounted to unlawful interference. So, if he is clear about the law, is it right then when he challenges the SIU and says their findings in this regard are, and I quote, illogical?
It seems like he does have a case, and the reason for that is procurement, and that's the Specifications Committee and the Adjudications Committee is an administrative matter, and no politician is supposed to be involved in that. And that's been the problem in so many other areas, is political interference. So the law's very clear, and he's claiming that he wasn't involved and interfering in the specifications and the adjudication of the tenders.
Yeah.
All he was doing was performing an oversight role.
Yeah.
So unless the SIU's got evidence that he was interfering in the awarding of tenders, it does seem as if he's on stronger ground.
And who does the buck stop with, Prof, when it comes to operational matters?
It's got two destinations. The first one is the administrative head, which would be a head of department or director general, depending on which tier of government you're talking about. And also political responsibility will be with the politician who has political oversight power.
Yeah.
So it's very clear with administration. Did it comply? Yes, no. And in this case, the head of department has already resigned from the Gauteng Health Department. Much more ambiguous in terms of political oversight, in terms of what the criteria are and how you establish whether it was performed effectively or not.
Yeah. Then, Prof, there is this person that, and this is why the former MEC captures it this way, that the SIU makes these illogical inferences, okay? He talks about how the SIU could not possibly rely on a statement that was made by the now former supply chain head, who has since resigned from that Department of Health, who, and I quote when apparently she was speaking, that the MEC wants his own people. Could the SIU rely on that statement and the veracity of that statement, Prof? How easy or difficult will it be to try and find its credibility or its believability, if you like?
It comes across as hearsay in that the head of supply chain management is asserting that without documented evidence or corroborating evidence. And that seems to be the attack that the MEC, the former MEC, is mounting to the charges. Now, it should be quite easy to prove in terms of a meeting that took place, a time, a date, so that it's got a lot more validity or weight than just an allegation in an affidavit.
Then, Prof, there is another element that speaks about the centralization of PPE procurement. The MEC saying this was a provincial government decision which essentially was in accordance with what the national model wanted. Now, here comes the SIU, which then says the MEC should not have supported this idea of centralizing procurement because it would appear in the SIU's view that this may have been done with nefarious purposes to potentially benefit the MEC himself, his wife, or friends. How do you read that?
That's all very vague. So you can centralize procurement for good reasons in terms of economy of scale and discounts, and in order to control the pricing in terms of the regulations that were announced, in terms of the deviations that are allowed by legislation. And you can only manage that effectively through centralization. So if the SIU's got evidence that there was an ulterior motive, the burden of proof is on them in making that allegation. Now, this has moved beyond the allegation that the former MEC didn't perform his oversight role properly. Now the claim is that there were fundamental acts of negligence or fundamental acts that were informed by ulterior motives. And now they've got to prove it. And it's not going to be that easy to prove, it seems.
Yeah. And Prof, I think thus far, just listening to your commentary around this, at the beginning you said, well, Bandile Masuku may have a case, and then you say, as far as some of the statements or the findings of the SIU are concerned, well, the SIU seems to put forward some vague statements. Is Bandile Masuku then correct, if I sum it up this way, and this is his way of viewing this whole case of the SIU against him? He says that it would appear here that the SIU is desperate to prop him up as the poster boy of COVID-19 corruption.
Well, I can't comment on whether he's right in saying that or not, but there's clearly public pressure for action in terms of the abuse of PPE procurement and the corruption and malfeasance surrounding that. And if that's his defense, then he has to demonstrate exactly that. What strengthens his hand here is the ambiguity of the Premier, David Makuru, in terms of trying to keep the door open for him.
Yeah.
And that suggests that even the Premier doesn't believe that he is as guilty of these allegations and claims that have been made in the public domain.
Yeah.
So if one crunches it all down, it seems like it's partly administrative and partly political, and provincial infighting inside the governing party, the skin of their teeth victory in 2019 in Gauteng. All of these variables might be impacting on the allegations put to the MEC. And now the courts must decide whether the evidence is credible or not.
Yeah.
But if I was a betting person, I would take a bit of a bet on the MEC winning this one.
It's interesting, Prof, because now you're taking us to the realm of politics. You talk about the Premier wanting to leave the post of MEC open or vacant and not wanting to fill it. And then we read today in the Sunday Times newspaper that the Premier, David Makura, may have lost that battle to try and keep the post of MEC vacant. And clearly the paper suggesting that Masuku and Makura and those, of course, that are accused of this may be victims of a powerful faction within the provincial ANC. Your thoughts?
It's plausible. I don't have factual information to support that. But in terms of the strange statements made by the Premier some weeks back about keeping the post open, in terms of the former MEC clearing his name and then coming back into office, and now the announcement of the PEC decision to appoint someone, that would indicate that politics is taking this matter over now. And it will be resolved politically, and we can read into that or infer into that the political dynamics inside the Gauteng ANC and the competitions for power around her office in the Gauteng provincial government.
Yeah.
So the court case is crucial to clarify a whole range of grey areas and allegations and inferences.
Yeah. Prof, as I let you go, there is another individual involved here, and that is presidential spokesperson Khusela Digo. Her involvement here, I haven't heard much of what the SIU's finding may be against her, but is she doing herself any favors by not taking this matter to court as well? It would seem that she's gone quiet, and along with her husband, who is also involved in this. What's your reading of her matter, given that the politics around this now, as far as her matter is concerned, she now is also suspended from party activities. But as far as her job in the presidency is concerned, I think she remains on special leave there.
So I think what's happening there is that she's probably keeping her powder dry, waiting for the outcome of this case, because she's only indirectly linked to this via her husband and the connection to the former MEC's wife, who is an actor in Johannesburg mayoral committee politics. So it's all entangled and all complicated, and you wait for the courts to rule on one issue before you use that ruling as a foundation for your case. So I think that good advice from someone, political or legal advice, is to get clarity on other cases first before you mount your defense. And again, the principle is, if your husband's involved in nefarious activities, it doesn't mean that you directly have been involved in those activities. And that's going to be the fine line and the technical legal argument that's going to play itself out, in my view, as this matter unfolds.
Prof. Ivor Sarakinsky, thank you very much for trying to at least cast a light on this murky issue. I tell you, it's going to be a very, very interesting one indeed. He is with the Wits School of Governance.